Hi, I'm Katie, and this is Monumental, a small show about the big things God does in the lives of ordinary people. Today, my friend Katie Crum joins me as co-host. You might remember Katie from Season 2 when we interviewed her and her mom, Valerie Killingsworth, on her mom's battle with cancer. Well, today, Katie and I get to interview one of our pastor's wives, Amy Moyer. Amy is going to share how God has been at work in her life in putting to death selfishness and wanting things her way.
Even though I grew up in a Christian home, I didn't know what it looked like to be a Christian. And we were involved in church, and I would always tell my friends about Jesus. You know, I went to public school, and that was something that I felt compelled to do. But like how it affected my sin and just my interactions with the people closest to you that you are most comfortable with, letting them feel your wrath.
Yeah.
Just didn't understand how that was supposed to affect that. Yeah. Yeah.
The way I grew up too was that was kind of Christian work, was sharing the gospel that way.
Yeah.
And so as I read the Bible, that's what I thought. Like, if you go into all the world, being a good Christian was sharing the gospel or being a missionary,
right?
Volunteering, those kind of things.
Yeah.
It just kind of overlooked the whole mundane, daily like, how hard that is to just submit to the gospel in your own life.
Right.
So
submit in any way was not in my vocabulary.
Right, yeah. So the way you thought of Christianity growing up was big actions, basically.
Yeah, and obviously like the golden rule and like, you know, being considerate of others and treating them the way you want to be treated. Like that was still a theme in our home. My parents, you know, didn't just let us rule the roost, but you just go to church and you go on missions trips and you tell people about Jesus and you talk to your friends about it. And I was just going to say also that just my childhood was very happy. We had good friends and I have lots of good memories. And I just, you know, I don't have anything to point to, you know, that like this set me off on a bad track or that there was just any bad memories from my childhood. I just I was very blessed with that.
So you weren't outrightly rebellious growing up or anything like that. It was just sort of this attitude of, I want my way.
Right. And so I remember reaching a point in my childhood that I said to my mom, you know, you're not always right. And she was like, you know, she didn't appreciate that very much at all. So part of what may or may not play into it is just that we lived close to Philadelphia. And the regional differences in personalities are pretty noticeable, you know, with certain people, I think. And we definitely have that stubborn, like, Philadelphia attitude. We were from a small town about an hour outside of Philadelphia, not actually within the city, but just, I think that whole area, the East Coast, is just very, you know, self-serving and kind of abrasive or something. So Philip and I grew up in the same church, and we met at a summer camp that our church put on every summer. And he was 2 years older than me, so we weren't in the same grade, and he graduated 2 years before me. But we became friends through high school. We started dating as much as you can when you don't drive, and we're just kind of saw each other at school and youth group and church. And I wasn't supposed to date, and I was a little bit rebellious about that because I thought I could have my way and it wasn't a big deal. We were serious, you know, by the time he graduated, we knew that we wanted to continue, you know, like pursuing a relationship and marriage. And so we both chose colleges that were about an hour from where we lived. We ended up planning our wedding for right after we graduated.
So what you're describing about yourself was sort of a I want my way kind of approach to life. How did that impact your relationship once you got closer to getting married and going into marriage?
I think Phil he was kind of more of a peacekeeper, like with me, that he was happy to just most of the time kind of do what it took to make me happy because I was really emotional and I would manipulate him, you know, not that I was conscious of it, but I knew that if I got emotional, then I would usually get my way with my parents, you know, when I wanted to go out with friends or something and they didn't want me to. And it was just kind of what I did. So he has told me that the week or two before the wedding was the only time that he ever had doubts about marrying me. Mm-hmm. And the day of the wedding rehearsal, whatever set me off, I was just a wreck. I wasn't having second thoughts. I was just an emotional wreck. And so I wasn't ready. And then I was late, and I just, it just kind of snowballs, like your emotion just, and then I kind of get paralyzed and like shut down, and then just cry. And anyway, I was 45 minutes late for our wedding rehearsal, and everybody is like sitting around waiting for me. And
so you get there and then you feel bad.
Yeah, I'm mad. I am mad at myself, and just like, I can't just go in and be normal. Everyone is kind of on edge, like, okay, when's she gonna like relax and be normal here? And,
well, because then you came in and you were mad.
Right. I was mad and at myself and everyone. And so
then how did marriage look for you after? What were things like for you guys?
We were both working full time at that point. And I had gone to college to be a veterinary technician. And so I loved my job, and I was really excited about gaining skills in that. And I was gaining a reputation at my workplace, and kind of just growing in that and getting really excited about that. And we fought quite a bit. We were really good friends. And so that helped us, like we knew how to get along and be friends. But when something didn't go the way I wanted it to, then everybody was going to be upset about it. Everybody was going to feel it, We fought about everything. I mean, all kinds of ridiculous things, I should say. So like what the neighbors were doing that annoyed me, and things about the house that we bought, and like what the dog chewed up, or the time that she jumped over the fence, and our dog jumped over the fence and ran away, and everything that upset me was Phil's fault. And so I just, I would be mad for days about it, which is so pathetic, to think about. I was so selfish, and not having had a good understanding of what biblical marriage is supposed to look like, and just considering, your spouse as your closest neighbor and the person that you are supposed to love, more than yourself. It just didn't translate into my heart and how I acted when I was upset, when I was stressed. That analogy about the cup, whatever you fill your cup with, when you get bumped is going to come out, And later on I was going to mention about that, the Bible verse about from the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. My heart was not full of God. It was not full of loving anyone but myself. I think when I was a child, I do think that I was a Christian. When I was younger, I remember being convicted about something with my brother, and like realizing like I need Jesus, and like having this emotional moment that I do think was my initial coming to faith.
An awareness that you were sinful.
But we didn't have teaching that helped us understand our sin and what to do with it. And so that's where we just followed, what felt normal, what felt appropriate.
Found someone else to blame.
Our selfish nature just, took over and followed what we saw, the world doing, and what everybody else did.
So Christianity at this point in your life looked more like going to church,
We had the assurance that we trusted Jesus and we would go to heaven when we died. Yeah. That was, that's the big thing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the most important thing, right? And so that was about it.
So then how did God start doing work in your life to show you more just day-to-day Christian living? Like what does it look like to be a Christian in the everyday, in all of the nitty-gritties of life?
Right. So we were working and just kind of doing like doing the early married thing. And then Phil decided to get a master's. And so I was working while he was in school, and he did like have assistantships that paid him and stuff, but I was the breadwinner primarily for a little while. And so that was fine because he was good at what he was studying. He was studying choral conducting, and he was just doing great and excelling with that. And we just expected that he'd end up eventually getting a great job. And I did always have the goal when we had children to stay home with them and be a stay-at-home mom and let him then take over with the breadwinning. But so he went on to want to do a doctorate after he finished with his master's, and he applied to a handful of really good schools, and a couple of them were on the East Coast. And I was like, we're not going to have to go far from our families. There's no reason he wouldn't get in at any of the other schools or any of those schools. And he also applied to Indiana and somewhere farther away. And I'm pretty sure I said, we are not going to Indiana. There was just no reason in my mind that we would end up in Indiana. And what do you know? He didn't get into those schools on the East Coast. And everybody was floored. His professors were just like flabbergasted and were like, what is this? What is this about? Yeah. So once I realized, that was what God, we did realize that God was planning this for us. And we knew like we're in this together and God has a plan, and we're going to go on this adventure together. And so we came out here, and
so you were disappointed, but you're also like, okay, well, this is clearly how
right.
God's leading,
Yeah.
So. And it was for school. And so in your mind, were you thinking, okay, it'll just be a short term thing?
Yes. Yeah. The plan was my plan was that we would be here for 3 years for him to get his program done. And then he would find his dream job, and we'd move back east where we could be closer to our families and then start a family.
Okay.
And I also had advanced in my career and was thinking about, further credentials for myself and getting more licensing. And I was excited about new prospects out here to, advance my own career, because I knew I was going to be working more while he was in school.
So you knew when you had kids you wanted to be stay-at-home mom, but here you also had some future career plans for yourself. So were you thinking we're not going to have kids for a while?
Right. Yeah. I definitely didn't want to work and have children at the same time. I always wanted to be a mom. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I just thought that was the way to raise kids.
Yeah.
And but we also were never really around children that were pleasant to be around.
Yeah.
And so we weren't like motivated to start before we were ready and before things were in order the way we thought they should be. And so we just, I was happy. I was perfectly content to put off having children until he was done. It just seemed like the right thing to do, to have everything in order and be able to be comfortable financially. But I also wasn't dreading the work that I was doing to make money.
Yeah.
And so moving out here, we were on the same page at first. And then when we got here and we started, visiting churches, we knew we wanted a church. And we visited Church of the Good Shepherd at that time because some friends actually from Philadelphia had suggested that we visit there when they knew we were moving.
Which is now our church, Trinity Reformed Church here.
Right.
Yeah.
We were immediately just attracted to the people, the love and the fellowship that they had, and the care that they, that we felt from quickly, spending time with people and getting involved in small groups and Bible studies and being invited to people's homes for dinner. We just had never experienced, that kind of church community that really cared for people and bared each other's burdens and just loved and showed Christ's love for each other. Yeah. And so we were like, well, this is obviously where God wants us. And Tim's preaching was different than what we had been used to. It definitely caused fruit in our lives, really confronted us with things that we had never processed before. And at the time he was preaching through Galatians, just seeing Galatians like opened up. I didn't mention before that I had never really studied the Bible, growing up in the church, Sunday school, and it just wasn't something that made sense to me. But Galatians, the last couple chapters about resisting your flesh, because when you sow to the flesh, you're going to reap destruction. And
But that was a new thought to you.
Yeah. I mean, everybody knows the saying, you reap what you sow.
Yeah.
But it really, to see it opened up about making provision for our sin and our flesh. And when we do that, we're not allowing the Spirit to do its work.
So how did that hit you practically? Like, was there something in your life where you're like, this thing is like, needs to change in my life?
Yeah. I think it was mostly in our marriage. Another thing I remembered was that the first Bible study that I started going to, it was the first time I was with other grown women sharing prayer requests. But those prayer circles really, just that fellowship and spurring one another on in godliness and praying for each other just was really, really amazing to me. And so I remember one of the first times I was able to share a prayer request, I was being convicted about the state of our marriage and the way I interacted. And I always punished Phil for not letting me have my way. And I knew that I needed to say that I was not submitting to my husband. There was a lot of talk about biblical marriage here, and I had never heard it taught in a way that was helpful and applicable to like real life. And so I was telling them that I needed prayer for that but I could not say the word submission. I was like, my marriage isn't good, and I'm not responding to my husband, in an appropriate way or something. I don't remember exactly what I said. And they were confused, like kind of trying to ask questions. What is it that she's trying to say here? And they were probably trying to, see if there was something, that he was abusive or, like
how serious is this? What's really going on?
Yeah. So they were really like careful and trying to ask questions. And I don't think that I, even that night, really opened up that much about it, because it wasn't all my fault. My whole attitude in life was that, I was justified in feeling the way that I sinned, and that was okay. It was excusable.
So did you get to a point where you could say that, or did somebody kind of figure it out and help you get there? Or
I think eventually I did, and maybe in my small group talking more about it,
those women were helpful to you. And
we got really close with our small group, and there was a lot of growth there. So Phil's growing at the same time also, and there are men, like coming alongside him and teaching him and challenging him in things. And he was aware, obviously, that our marriage was messed up, and he wasn't happy. We were both miserable, in that we were friends and we loved each other, but we were making ourselves miserable, when we would have these big conflicts. And so I started to realize that I had put my foot down about several things. Like I said, we're not going to move to Indiana. And I told my grandmother, we're not going to have children in Indiana. We're not going to stay there longer than 3 years. Like I was
You had it planned
set. I had it planned, and this is how it was going to be. And God started showing me, like, all these things that you're saying that you're not going to do, I actually have a different plan for that.
Never say
and
never.
So we were...
Did you say those things to Philip? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Or maybe... I probably did, but maybe just in conversation with other people. I think I'm sure I said it to the Bakers because we were in their small group. Anyway. Like, we're not going to have kids here. We're not going to, do all these things. And they were like, okay,
just you wait.
So sweet, right? Yeah. So he started, we started being convicted about our lack of desire to have children anytime soon because of being career motivated. And I think that hit him harder first. And he started to tell me, every time you say that you don't want to have kids here, it just kills me, like, because he was just seeing all the potential, the ways we were growing and the potential to be able to raise children in this environment. He was like, just stop saying that because it's crushing me, you know? And so I was starting to come around, like starting to spend time with families that had children that were a delight to be around, you know? And we were kind of astonished, like, this can be really pleasant.
You were seeing
know?
kids in a way you hadn't seen
Yeah,
before.
we were. And I think also I was just maturing. At this point, I was like 26, and I think I am a slow learner, but I thought I was a mature person, but God was maturing us and in our marriage and in our faith. And so I was realizing, like, I need to desire children. That sounds bad.
Well, it's a good
true.
and a godly desire.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I realized, I think, that it was more than just a worldly desire. Like, actually, God wants us to bear fruit in having children and being fruitful in that way. And so I think that was along the lines of being convicted about my selfishness and my contentment and my humility, and there's so many things. I was just so selfish, and realizing that was part of it, is a desire to have children, and that was a good thing. And so I remember the day that so Phil was ahead of me in this desire, and we were going to small group, and we pull in the driveway at small group, and he's just like really feeling convicted about our attitude towards children. And I had been on the birth control pill, and he was like, I want you to stop taking the birth control pill now. It wasn't the first time that we brought it up. So thankfully, you know, we talk a lot. I probably talk a lot more than the average wife. And so I think, and because we practically grew up together, you know, knowing each other from teenagers, and we just are good friends and talk about a lot of things. And so we had already talked about it, and I knew that it was coming, but the fact that he was like, today, you're going to stop this. And so, of course, I start crying, and, you know, like, we're late for small group, and we go in, and I'm obviously crying. And
Were you mad?
I don't think I was mad.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I was just emotional because I knew it was the right thing, but it was so scary.
Yeah.
You know, it was not what I thought I wanted. It wasn't what I had in the past thought I wanted. And it wasn't
aligning with your plan.
Exactly. It wasn't a part of the plan that I thought was best. But I knew that it was a good thing. And so I was like, you know, the biggest step to enter into these new waters, you know, once, you know, we accepted that, and we're like, I mean, we were praying about it, and like, we know this is right, but we don't know what it's going to look like, you know, because at this point he was probably in his second year. Maybe it was still his first year of grad school here. And I wanted to be able to stay home once we had kids, and he wasn't making a lot of money in his assistantship, you know, at IU. And so we're going to try this faith thing out, you know.
It's hard.
It's very
really hard.
Yeah.
And scary. Yeah.
So another area that I was really controlling over were our finances, because I was working full time, and I felt like I had to claim over a lot of the money, or, you know, we had to agree about how our money was spent, and because I was making the most of it. And when Phil started doing music with Jody and the band, and they started writing music and wanting to record, he wanted to buy this piece of recording equipment, and he went, and it was a big expense, and he just bought it with our money. And he didn't tell me he was going to, but he wasn't hiding it from me. It was just one of those things that he was going to practice his leadership and do that. And I got so mad at him. This was to that point in our marriage, in our relationship, I had never been this mad at him. And I got mad a lot, you know. And I was so mad at him. And this, you know, was our biggest fight, where I was making him feel so bad that he had done that. And, you know, that was kind of that was how I operated. Like, you upset me and, you need to feel bad about it. Mm-hmm. And so he was questioning, maybe that was the wrong decision. Mm-hmm. And, it was like something he was trying to practice his leadership. And so he was like, what have I done? And I was so mad at him. I couldn't even be in the same room. I was just like, I say I got angry a lot, but I wasn't like a screamer. We're not screamers or like slammers or, I guess I'm a crier when I'm mad.
Yeah. Not even like a freezing out or wouldn't talk for
well, that would come.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little
some
bit
of that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just more almost just emotional manipulation.
Yeah. So usually we would, go and do our separate things and process, after we would fight. And then eventually either we would just it would blow over, or, that was how our fights sometimes went, or sometimes we would sit down and talk about it. And but there wasn't a whole lot of apologizing on my part ever. But this time I went and I took a shower, and I was trying to process, I know I shouldn't be loving money, and I shouldn't be treating my husband like this. And what, it's just money. Why am I so upset? And I just felt like the Lord starting to work in my heart. And I was realizing how much I was loving that money and holding on to that, that control of it. And Psalm 51 started, going in my mind. I always loved that song, Created Me a Clean Heart, as a child. We always sang it. And it really started to make sense to me. And I was applying it. I had something to apply it to. I was being very wicked and unloving towards my husband. And I need God to clean my heart and renew a steadfast spirit in me. And so
is it even about the love of money so much as about just fighting against his leadership and
at
not
the time
having control in the relationship?
Right. I think it was control.
Yeah.
Not as much about the love of money, but the control. And I guess it was convicted about the submission too.
So how did it?
So then I was completely humbled. And I was like, I need to confess to Philip and ask him to forgive me. And I went in, and he was laying down, and, he was really upset. And I was just like, I'm sorry. I'm not following God. I am not loving you. I'm loving my money. And asked him to forgive me. And he was just like, what? Who are you? I had never, ever behaved like that. And so that, in a way, was a turning point for us to just feel, God giving us this faith to trust him and forgive each other and not, just not have to battle it out. And it was a sweet time. And I also saw the benefit of him buying that for the music that they were doing. And the music has, over the years has become such a blessing and has just brought so much fruit through ways that we, never expected. And it's been really wonderful.
Yeah. So you obviously mentioned Philip working with Jody and the band. So for our listeners who don't know all the history or don't know our church, just to fill out your story here.
Yeah.
Obviously, God led you guys to stay in Indiana and have greater involvement in the church.
Yeah, we started to realize once we started getting things in better order with our marriage, God didn't bring us here for IU. He brought us here to grow our faith and bring us into this church and just grow us here. And so let me backtrack for something else too.
Yeah.
So once we were, we thought we were ready to have children. We think okay, this is going to happen. And we're just praying about it and thinking about it. And then it becomes a new idol for us because my body was not cooperating. I wasn't getting pregnant, and it ended up being a year and a half after I stopped taking birth control until I got pregnant with Levi. And, going through that month after month, I was just like starting to grow bitter about it.
It was more plans you had that weren't going your way.
Right. Yeah. I thought, okay, Lord, this is obviously the best thing that you want for us. And so we're ready. Right. And God was like, no, you're not in control. Yeah. And you're going to wait on me. And so my contentment was stretched there because that's what I wanted then, and I started being less satisfied with my job. And actually my job situation out here was not what I thought it would be either. And so I had 3 jobs within the first year of living here. And Indiana is just not as progressive in veterinary medicine the way it was where I came from. And I was disappointed in that. And I felt like, okay, I can help make a difference here in my workplaces. And they were not ready for it. And so there was a struggle with that, my contentment, and with just my submission to my bosses and my attitudes at work and how I was being a Christian witness or not there. Yeah. And at one point I was convicted about the verse is it 1 Peter, I think, about slaves submitting to their masters and honoring them because this honors the Lord, even the wicked ones, and my bosses weren't wicked, but they just didn't, live up to my expectations. And I was like, whoa, I am really disgracing God by my attitude towards my employer. And even just the way I talk about them, like I don't think I was outright rude to them usually, but even my attitude with the coworkers complaining and gossiping about all kinds of things, it definitely became an area that I realized I was sinning. But that ended up being a gift, to pull my heart away from that idol of my job and being, gaining success in my career. And I also was being mentored by Sebra around this time. And
Sebra Baker, yeah.
One day we were talking and I was anticipating an interaction with someone, and I felt justified in my annoyance with this person and the way I responded. And she, I expected her to be sympathetic, and I'm complaining about the situation, and she was just like, no, you cannot feel this way. You can't act like that. And I had never had anyone tell me that. She's like, you're not loving that person and you need to change this. And I was just like, whoa, nobody had ever talked to me like that before. And it was so helpful. Like, this is not honoring to God, and you are a Christian and you need to change this and you need to repent of that. And the thing that also just so encouraging to me when I think about like all these things I was convicted about and all the ways that my life was out of line with God's word, but being convicted is good and wanting to change is good. But I saw time and time again that I couldn't do it on my own, like I don't have the strength to obey and be godly, and just realizing God doesn't expect us to do it on our own. And this is why Christ died. This is why he sent his son and why he gave us his Holy Spirit to enable us and strengthen us. And I think Pastor Max said at one point, you can ask for the Holy Spirit to help you. This is a good thing to do, and this is a reasonable thing to do, but you don't think of doing that. I don't know. I didn't at the time, think to ask God to give me the Holy Spirit. For this or that. And
well, it kind of goes along with the attitude you had for so long of, this is what I want, I'm kind of in control.
Right.
This whole progression of God softening your heart. And then the same thing of recognizing, even now that I'm gaining more of God's desires and wanting to do his will and live for him, even that I have to submit to him and receive his help in that.
Right. Yeah. We obviously were just growing a lot in a lot of different areas. And I think at the same time, Phil was kind of feeling conflicted about his career path. And God was working on his heart and showing him there's so much worthy work for you in the church and helping church music for people to worship from and be strengthened by. And yeah, that's a lot of his story with working with Jody and everything. But he started feeling called to the pastor's college that we had here. He was just starting to feel pulled away from pursuing a career in music excellence to ministry and serving God and serving the people. And so I don't remember ever feeling disappointed, that we changed. I think God was gracious to us and kind of bringing us together on that.
By the time you got to that point,
yeah,
God had done so much work in your lives. You were ready. So had that been about 3 years by that point? Then that you guys were in Indiana?
I think it was.
Yeah. Okay.
It was.
Which was your
that was my plan, to be out by then. The house has to get back on the market, and we're gonna head out. So yeah, we both he graduated, and Levi was born like the next month, and it was all kind of happening, and we were excited about having a family then, and
you were excited about staying.
I was excited about staying because I wanted to learn how to raise children in a healthy church and teach them the things of the Lord. And at this point, I stopped working because Levi was born, and Phil graduated and had no income from IU at that point. But we didn't know how he was going to make money right then. And he was like, we'll figure something out. He didn't have anything set up yet.
So that was
one of those
big steps of faith.
That was another step.
Yeah.
That was a big step of faith then, because money had been a very big concern in our lives. Yeah. And so God provided through work.
Well,
so
so he was going to pastor's college then, which is
right.
A 2 or 3
3 years.
So God continued to provide work while he went through pastor's college. Then he graduated from pastor's college.
We had another son by the time we graduated from pastor's college. Adjusting to motherhood was interesting. You think, we'll just do what makes sense and what feels right, and that was startling, kind of having to take care of your own baby. It sounds bad, but like I said, I hadn't really been around kids that I enjoyed very much. And I didn't know how to take care of a baby or multiple children. And I was startled at points by my anger towards them and my sin towards them. It brought out new things that I had never thought about. Yeah, new levels of selfishness. So that was another area that I could see, that I needed to rely on God for. I just remember when one of them was a baby, and like just their crying made me angry.
I think that's actually pretty common.
But I never heard these things.
Moms share things like that.
Yeah. And also being in a community where I felt like I could, ask women about this and be encouraged and be instructed, on how to deal with these things. Yeah. And not act out in ways that I shouldn't. And there's a lot of different ways God provided. He provided, and
you had so many sort of expectations of how you wanted things to go and plans for your life, and time after time, God was just saying, "Nope, not that. Nope, not that."
Right.
I'm in control of this. I'm in control of this. And through all of that, God just showing you, okay, I need to trust God. Also God just shifting your hearts to him from plans for your lives and your future that were for you guys to wanting to serve God and serve the church.
I remember Mary Lee saying one time how you can't just say, well, I don't have a gentle and quiet spirit, which is pleasing to the Lord. And it's just how I am. And I have always been tempted to blame, I wasn't taught to be this way, or, this is the way I am because nobody taught me better. And that, hit me like, no, God tells us to be this way, and he will equip us to do that. And we can't just say, sorry, not this way. Yeah. God knows that we're not able to do that on our own, and he gives us what we need. it's just comforting, to know like he gives us everything that we need. He expects us to glorify him, and he gives us what we need to do that. It's not something that we're supposed to be able to muster up on our own. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't expect us to, and we can't. So it's perfect because he has given us what we need.
This episode of Monumental was hosted by Katie Walker and Katie Crum. It is produced and edited by Katie Walker, and it is executive produced by Nathan Alberson and Jake Menzel. If you like the show, please don't forget to rate and review in the app of your choice. And if you're interested in more great content, including articles and other podcasts, please visit warhornmedia.com.